The Fast Radio Telescope in China recorded unusual signals coming from the Kepler telescope. Kepler 438, a star 473 light-years from Earth. At first, the scientific community thought it was just terrestrial interference, but the discovery rekindled an old unease. If our instruments are becoming ever more powerful, why are we still immersed in the same cosmic silence? Here the most difficult question of modern physics arises: the Fermi paradox. The logic is simple and brutal. In a galaxy with more than 100 billion stars, many of which host potentially habitable planets, life should be abundant. Statistically, technological civilizations should be widespread, scattered like cities across an enormous interconnected network. And yet we receive only complete non-response. Decades of patient listening with radio telescopes, projects like SETI, and deliberate radio transmissions sent into deep space have not returned a greeting, only noise. This paradox is troubling because it shatters our most basic expectations. If life is not rare, where are the others? Are civilizations deliberately hiding? Did they die out before achieving interstellar communication, or worse? What if it's our fault for assuming dialogue is the universal standard? This concern grew into serious tension when, in 2023, NASA acknowledged that its Voyager probes, especially Voyager 2, began showing strange telemetry signals. Launched in 1977, that small spacecraft, massing about 722 kilograms and powered by a plutonium radioisotope thermoelectric generator, exceeded all expectations and crossed the heliosphere boundary in 2018. It became the second human-made object to enter interstellar space. Since then, its functions had been modest but valuable. It transmitted data about particles, magnetic fields, and cosmic radiation. That mission became symbolic. It was no longer a race for flashy discoveries, but the quiet persistence of a lonely messenger sending routine data from 12 billion miles away. Every bit of information reached us in 18 hours, even if it traveled at the speed of light. It was a harsh reminder of the vastness and isolation we face when probing space. Everything seemed predictable until an unexpected intruder appeared. Interstellar Object 3, ATLAS. This icy body, discovered by telescopes in Hawaii, traveled into the solar system on a hyperbolic trajectory from beyond. At first, it was just another mysterious visitor following in the wake of Oumuamua and Comet Borisov. But soon the calculations revealed something unusual. Its path skimmed dangerously close to Voyager 2's trajectory. Millions of kilometers of separating space may seem insurmountable to us, but on cosmic scales, that's a very intimate encounter. For the scientific community, it was a real gift. For the first time, we could observe, albeit indirectly, an interaction between an interstellar object and an artificial probe in deep space. It was a chance to obtain unique data. And yet that moment of anticipation quickly turned to alarm. At the calculated moment of closest approach, the Voyager 2 signal stopped being received by tracking antennas in Canberra. There was no increasing static, no gradual fade. The channel simply went out, as if someone had flipped a switch at 12 billion miles away. However, before the final silence, Voyager transmitted a last packet of data, only a few kilobytes, but enough to split opinion into skeptics and the bewildered. It contained data that at minimum contradicted known laws of physics, variations in acceleration incompatible with the massive object 3IATLAS, sudden changes in orientation, and an incoherent thermal record as if the spacecraft had undergone intense heating and then cooled to temperatures below what is typical for deep space. For many, this was just another electronic gasp of an aging machine, a failure of several systems coinciding with the flyby of a foreign object. For others, the synchrony and the odd sequence of recordings were impossible to ignore. And here the Fermi paradox takes on a new aspect. Perhaps the question is not only, where is everybody, but rather, maybe they are already here. And our first interaction was not a dialogue, but a disappearance. Voyager 2's final data packet was more than damaged telemetry. It contained a pattern, an unexpected mathematical structure that sent cryptographers and theoretical physicists into weeks of debate. What was hidden in that distant echo of deep space? When NASA engineers opened the last packet sent by Voyager 2, They expected to find only corrupted records. Instead, they discovered a data set so anomalous that it quickly spread through internal reports and private scientific discussions. The first strange fact, from the magnetometer, it recorded a gravitational disturbance equivalent to the presence of a lunar mass body. That is physically incoherent. Object 3IATLAS, judging by its observed brightness, appeared to be only an icy rock a few kilometers across. Even an inflated density estimate could not produce the trajectory deviation recorded by Voyager. It was as if a car on an empty road had suddenly been tugged by something invisible. The second oddity was the probe's orientation. For more than 4 decades, gyros and thrusters had kept Voyager's antenna perfectly pointed at Earth. In the last minutes, the system registered a sharp rotation, as if the spacecraft had entered a vortex. For the team in Pasadena, such motion made no sense. Interstellar space is stable. There is no turbulence capable of producing that effect. The third item was even more disconcerting. Thermal sensors recorded a rapid heating followed by cooling to below the natural vacuum baseline. In space, where there is no atmosphere to conduct heat, such abrupt temperature swings are impossible without the intervention of an external source. One engineer described the data as evidence of an invisible breath, something that touched the probe and then silently left. But the element that truly kept scientists awake at night was the final block of telemetry. It did not show the chaotic noise expected from failing systems. On the contrary, the bits were organized into certain structures, compressed in an unknown manner. A Harvard physicist, Avi Loeb, suggested in interviews that this structure resembled an attempt to model properties of spacetime. These were not raw sensor logs, but a complex mathematical representation. The inevitable comparison was to the film Contact, where an alien message arrives encoded in number sequences. But unlike fiction, there were no explicit ciphers or greeting messages here. Analysts found a geometric construction, a kind of multidimensional map, that did not fit Einstein's theory of relativity nor the standard model of particle physics. It was like receiving a physics textbook written in a language we have not yet invented. This episode did not remain confined to scientific forums. For the wider public, it reignited debates about the Fermi paradox. Many newspapers recalled Carl Sagan's image of the Voyagers as a kind of bottle launched into the cosmic ocean, with a golden record on board filled with songs, diagrams, and greetings in 55 languages. The idea was poetic. Show who we are if someone meets the craft. Few imagined that the first response might not be a greeting, but an enigmatic signal transmitted seconds before the human envoy falls silent. The shock brought a painful thought into focus. What if cosmic communication does not obey our rules? We invested billions in giant antennas, assuming another civilization would send radio signals similar to ours. But if they exist, they might use mathematical structures, gravitational patterns, or even manipulations of space and time as their language. In this case, we are not just listening at the wrong frequency. We are trying to decipher an alphabet we do not know. This realization directly affects our daily life, even if it seems remote at first glance. After all, science shapes our understanding of our place in the universe. If we cannot grasp even a fragment of information transmitted by a possible external intelligence, what does that say about our technological maturity? It is as if we are children listening to a symphony, able to recognize only a few isolated sounds and not the melody. Moreover, there is a deep psychological factor. The cosmic silence has always fed both hope and fear. Hope that we are not alone, fear that any meeting might be unfriendly. Now, faced with a possible indirect contact, we must reassess. Space is not simply indifferent. It may be active and may already have noticed us. If you have read this far, then this mystery is close to you too. Subscribe to the channel and hit like. It's not just support, but an invitation to continue seeking the solution together to what the universe is letting slip. But the worst was yet to come. After weeks of analysis, cryptographers found that the final structure transmitted by Voyager was not merely mathematical. It contained too much symmetry, too much regularity. It was not noise. It was not a malfunction. It was a construction with a beginning, middle, and end. A message that could be interpreted as a model or as a report. If the last signal was a report, then an inevitable question arises. To whom was it reporting? The scientific community proposed three main hypotheses, none comforting. There are issues science still avoids discussing openly, but anyone who has started to notice the signs knows that research exists beyond traditional academia. In fact, some of these analyses are collected in a document few know about. We will talk about that at the end. From Voyager 2's last signal, three hypotheses emerged. Three narratives that challenge not only our science, but our conception of our own existence. The first, the most convenient, is that it was simply a technical failure. An unlikely cluster of malfunctions that coincidentally occurred exactly when Object 3IATLAS crossed the probe's path. This hypothesis is useful because it protects the emotional equilibrium of the scientific community. But it's so statistically improbable that accepting it requires ignoring facts. It's like blaming a catastrophe on all bolts loosening at once at the same second. Theoretically possible, maybe, probable, absolutely not. The second hypothesis is bolder. Object 3IATLAS might not be an ordinary rock, an exotic object, a quark microstar, a droplet of primordial matter from the Big Bang, or even a tiny dense singularity. Such bodies could distort space around them, explaining magnetic and thermal data. But this hypothesis also runs up against a chasm. Exotic matter does not generate organized information. It might shear a spacecraft in two, but it cannot write an unknown compression algorithm or transmit a structured equation. And here the third hypothesis appears, the one nobody likes to state publicly, the technogenic hypothesis. Object 3IATLAS would not be a chunk of interstellar ice but an artifact, not a patrol craft, but a lost fragment of a galactic network that does not ask permission or send greetings. It simply follows protocols. It detects, intercepts, records. Voyager 2 may have been classified as an object of interest, analyzed, and ultimately silenced. This vision is disturbing because it upends the entire logic of the network that for decades made us believe first contact would be a dialogue. Perhaps it is not. Perhaps we are merely samples in a cosmic laboratory. Maybe our poetic attempt to say hello was answered by a cold note in an interplanetary report. Object observed, sample collected. Ignoring this possibility does not make it less real. On the contrary, it makes us vulnerable if technologies exist that can manipulate gravity over interstellar distances. And much more is at stake. Cosmic silence may not be mere absence, but deliberate concealment. And if it is concealment, that implies a policy or code of conduct among advanced civilizations that has never been explained to the public. The consequences are profound. Scientifically, this episode forces us to rethink the nature of reality itself. Voyager's last signal suggests mathematical structures that do not fit within general relativity or the Standard Model. Philosophically, it forces us to admit that we do not control the course of our own cosmic story. We are being observed, evaluated, and that changes everything. The greatest discovery did not happen in space. That is what they tried to hide from those who watched. An electronic book on the mind of the Creator. Does the universe possess consciousness? Hard reading, and not for everyone. It was written for those who already understand that something subtle is being masked here. You can now find it in the pinned comment or via the QR code. But know this, some truths cannot be returned. And now I must leave you with a question that may have no immediate answer. When Voyager 2 transmitted that final mathematical structure, was it being used merely as an antenna? Might our own civilization, for a moment, have served as a conduit for another intelligence to speak to someone other than us? If that unsettles you, good. Discomfort is a sign that we have encountered something larger than our models explain. That is how every true scientific revolution begins. If these reflections moved you, subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Not because it's good for the algorithm, but because we need to build a community capable of boldly confronting the cosmic silence together.